It's hard to think of a more fitting reading for me to have as I celebrate my first weekend and my first assignment as a priest. Jesus says in the gospel, "The harvest is abundant, but the laborers are few. So ask the master of the harvest to send out laborers for his harvest." Growing up, this gospel would always be followed by a call to pray steadfastly and fervently for more men to be willing to respond to the call of the priesthood. Little did I know that when I prayed for more laborers for the harvest, that I was praying for myself. Little did you know that when you prayed for laborers, that I and my 6 brother priests who were ordained just several weeks ago would be the ones that God would send. And should you ever wonder whether or not God hears your prayers for more priests, the evidence is here before you. Lucky you, this is what you get. But as I look back over my life, I can see this slow work of God in me, calling and preparing me to say yes to his invitation to follow him as his priest. So as I start my ministry here at St. John, St. Joseph, I'd like to share with you just how the Lord called me and some of how I see my role as a laborer, working to bring in that abundant harvest for the Lord. I grew up the youngest of 10 siblings. So cradle Catholic. I grew up on a dairy farm. Milked a lot of cows growing up. We always had about like 90 to 100 that we were always milking. We did all the standard Catholic things. We would go to 8:30 a.m. Mass on Sunday. We had a little almost like section of pews reserved for us because we had a big family, and that's kind of what happened sometimes. We would pray before meals. Sometimes we would pray together as a family during the week. Perhaps most importantly, my family, they always taught me to say prayers before going to bed. So for me, that would form a lot of the backbone of my own prayer life growing up. But my family was also unique in that I have twin older brothers. They're 11 years older than me. And they both went to seminary, and they would be ordained priests as I ended my freshman year of high school. This combined with the fact that I have an uncle who's a priest as well, and for his day off, he would always come back to the farm to do some work where he can see results getting done in front of him, do a little manual labor. It meant that I was constantly around priests and around people interested in becoming priests. The result of that was there's no doubt in my mind that God had a plan for my life, and that if I asked him, he would tell me what that was. So there's a lot of kind of keys for success present here already in my story, but there's a bit of a sticking point. That is, I tend to be a bit of a stubborn person even to this day. And then from a young age, as soon as my brothers entered seminary, I decided I don't want to be a priest. So the Lord had a little bit of work to do. The first time I ever heard God calling me to be a priest, that the idea really ever kind of came to me, it was in 6th grade. I had attended the local Catholic school, and that day, instead of riding the bus home, I was waiting for Mom to pick me up in the church. And since I'm in the church, I'm praying because what else do I do? And I asked God that question. God, what am I supposed to do with my life? And that day, to my surprise, I received an answer. The idea popped into my head. You could be a priest. And in the moment, I was somewhat on board with that. I was like, yeah, I guess I could. I've never really thought about that much, except I don't want it. But, okay, I suppose. Like I thought of my uncle, seeing him just time and time again, praying his breviary around the farm, just the simple faithfulness of a priest. I thought of my brothers, all their college seminarian friends who would be coming over to just hang out, and seeing them like, wow, these are normal dudes and they look happy, like that, okay, it can't be that bad. But then my brain caught up with my heart, and just all the reasons why that would be a bad idea started coming to mind. Things like, well, I'm not really holy enough, like I don't pray enough, like priests have to pray a lot. I struggle with all these things, like that can't work. Even like things such as, Mass is kind of boring and priests have to say Mass an awful lot. I don't know if I'd like that. But also holier things like, I've always kind of wanted to be married. That's always what I assumed would happen. But that doesn't really jive with priesthood, so how's this going to work out? And the end result of that was, that must not be God speaking to me. That must just be me kind of making things up. And so this started a pattern in my life. I would continually ask God, what am I supposed to do? Because, I was a good Catholic kid, and that's what you do. You ask God what you're supposed to do with your life. And inevitably, the idea of priesthood would start coming back in various ways. And I would say, God, this is just me. This is not you speaking to me. So I need you to make it really clear what I'm supposed to do. Because this priesthood thing's all that's coming to mind, and I know that's not you, so you got to speak louder than that idea. It didn't work out for me that well. So this pattern was more or less what I followed up until my junior year of high school. I would pray, what should I do with my life? You should be a priest. All right, that's not God. Get rid of that idea. Let's, fill in with something new. But during my junior year of high school, I was confronted with every high schooler's favorite question over and over again. What are you going to do when you graduate? Where are you going to go to college? Fortunately, I had an idea. I enjoyed drafting. I enjoyed architecture. So I was taking a college architecture class at the time, and I was like, I'll be an architect. It'll be great. And so that became my answer. And that's what I started planning my future around. And it was all running very smoothly for me until one night in November. I was milking the cows. It had become standard for me at that time. And the problem with milking cows is that it's really boring. Like, you listen to stuff on the radio, and then that just gets old, and suddenly you're just tired of it, and you're just sitting there in silence for like 3 hours every night, and you're just thinking about your life and what's going to come, and maybe talking to God about it if you're, particularly holy and inspired to do that, which sometimes I was, not always. But that meant that I was just thinking about what my life would be like. I was planning it all out. So that night in November, I was just once again running through my plans. I saw myself graduating. I'd go to this college. I'd get this job. It would be awesome. I enjoyed the work I was doing. It was a lot of fun. I saw myself getting married, all that fun stuff. But then there was a realization that kind of changed everything. I realized that if I followed through that plan, that there was going to be something missing in my life, that there was just a gap in my heart that wouldn't be filled. And I could not have told you what that thing was at that time. But it was obvious to me that my plan was not going to cut it any longer. And that shook me. And it shook me enough to finally start honestly turning to God, asking him to show me what would actually make me happy. And when I did that, he gradually began to show me these deeper desires in my heart. I realized I had a deep passion for my faith. I loved sharing it with others. I remembered various times when I was in high school when I would talk to my classmates about just the faith, about God, about why they should be Catholic too. Not exactly normal things for most high schoolers at the time in my school. I saw that I loved the sacraments, that I'd had very profound experiences of the Lord's mercy and love in confession and in the Eucharist. And I wanted to share that with others. I wanted other people to experience that same grace, that same mercy. I wanted them to have a relationship with Jesus like I had discovered, like I had found. And it was enough to get me to be finally open to the idea that all those times I was praying and asking God what I should do, that might actually have been him speaking, calling me to be a priest. For much of my life, I had been telling God that I'll do whatever you tell me. If you just tell me to do it, I'll do it. But suddenly I was there praying that prayer about going to seminary. And for the first time when I said that, I really meant it. I remember telling the Lord very clearly, I think you're calling me to be a priest. I think you're calling me to go to seminary. And I will go. And the moment I finished that prayer, I experienced a peace, a joy that have stayed with me to this day. I found what I was missing in my heart, the Lord. And I'm so grateful that God has called me to share in his priesthood, that he has called me to serve all of you. My desire for you is that you would know the Lord and his love for you, that you would encounter his mercy, that you would see the grace of God at work in your lives, at work in the world, just like the 72 in the gospel. The harvest is indeed abundant, and the Lord is looking for laborers to go out and to bring in those who need him. Pray for more men and women to be open to these deeper desires of their hearts, the desires that God has placed within them. But also remember that he has called you to be laborers as well. Pray for conversions in your families, in your workplaces. Take the time to have simple conversations where you speak about how God has helped you, maybe through a difficult time, how something has impacted you from Mass or from Scripture. Just as the Lord sent out those 72 ahead of him to every town that he intended to visit, he is sending you to the people that he wants to visit. Be generous in preparing the ground so that a rich harvest might be brought in. Love those around you enough to share Jesus with them.